Okay, so we're just waiting for Jubilant. So, so I saw something about the feds maybe lowering interest rates.
Again, yeah,
So
they're
what's your
leaning
take on all
towards it
that?
right now. We'll see if they actually do. And the meeting is on the 17th and 18th. So we'll hear the notes on the 18th from the meeting.
Okay. Then, so like, kind of where are we in the overall scheme of things? Um, do you think everything is, just held on and people are going to come back to the market after the holidays, or kind
Uh,
of
had
what's
we,
your impression?
I've had several interesting conversations, both with other people in the industry and then like just my wife. She's a better watcher actually of our local real estate market than I am. Just I've got so much, but she just pays attention to like our neighborhood and surrounding areas and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to, because I know that, like I know that she's always watching. I said this morning, I said, "Hey, did you notice? Because we have ourselves on a market watch for Folsom all the time, that she, myself, and a couple other of my family members are on, just so that we know what's going on with our own property values." I said, "Did you notice property values are moving downward right here in Folsom?" And she goes, "I did." And I said, "Yeah, things are finally being realistically priced now. Things that are houses that are, around 1,200, 1,100, 1,300 square foot. They're all most of those are all older homes. But now you couldn't find a home for the last 3 years under 500,000 in this town. Now all of a sudden you can. You can find several homes under $500,000 in our neighborhood. And when I say under five, I mean like you couldn't touch anything for like less than 540, 550, 575 in town, even if it was only at like 1,000 to 1,100 square feet.
Hmm.
So I had already noticed that that was happening in the foothills and in the rural communities. Now it's happening in some of the most affluent suburban areas as well, which is like Folsom is considered here. So it's interesting to see that the market is moving down, which is the typical cycle. Things cool off during the winter. However, the purchase market has started moving a little quicker than it did over the summer because the Fed has announced, hey, rates are going down.
Hmm.
But even though that the Fed has announced rates have gone down and made a legitimate reduction of 0.5% and then 0.25% for a total of 0.75 so far, it has done nothing for real estate interest rates. Mortgage interest rates have not actually physically gone down since the Fed came out, made their first announcement of 0.5%. And then on top of that, right after they made that announcement, Israel got bombed by Iran. So
Hmm.
that was huge for global markets, and that was huge for our national market here. Um, and things have continued to escalate, not de-escalate. So there's some interesting points. We always see rates get better at this time, regardless of what is already going on. We see what's called a margin compression for profit margins. We are barely seeing that. Like normally we have a half dozen to 10 lenders competing against each other. We really don't have that. We have like three or four lenders nationally right now that are trying to compete for business, and they're being really nichey about it. Normally it's a blanket just to get all loans in. The lenders are being real nichey about what they want to compress their profit margins on right now. Some are just going for government loans. Some are going for non-QM loans like your jumbo and your weird self-employed bank statement type programs. So it's really, really interesting to see how diverse the market is right now as far as programs, niches, offerings, lenders, very few lowering rate right now, which normally they're all lowering rate right now just to keep business coming in the doors. And it's not happening on a wide scale right now. Maybe it'll happen in January and they're holding off for the inauguration. Because that does typically happen in a election year. We don't
Hmm.
have as large of movements because they're waiting to see what's going to happen within the first 2 weeks of the inauguration. How many policies are going to get started to be changed, going to be changed, going to be written into new law, etc. A lot of things can happen, and so I think are people. The market is cautiously waiting for that inauguration.
That's very interesting. Well, I think that also who's going to be placed in the cabinet,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Because
Well, and there's
there's
already, as soon as he was elected, there was already outspoken current, I'll just say seated, meaning they can be either elected into their positions or they can just be appointed into their positions, or they could have earned their positions over seniority. But there's a lot of economical seats who spoke up right away and said, I won't move, I won't change my stance, I'm not going to leave my position. There was at least five different people who currently hold positions who said, I won't change, my course of action with the new president, which is the opposite of what happened when Trump came into presidency last time, because he put a lot of
hmm,
pressure on people within the first 90 days. And by the fourth month, we started seeing policy change that immediately started to affect the um, uh, interest rates, mortgage industry, and real estate values. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Not to mention, he got highlighted. Uh, Granted, it really nothing came of it, but his actions in real estate to falsify values did come up and was
hmm.
very, very, very highlighted and under a microscope. So it'll be interesting to see how much he actually wants to play policymaker in that arena, but we really do need movement in real estate as far as initiatives for affordable housing. There's some policies we could change right away that has nothing to do with him, just everything to do with how the government has manipulated the real estate and mortgage markets for the last decade. And all they would need to do is just stop playing around with the conforming loan limit. If
Hmm.
they reverse that, if they just reverse that, um, and said, you know what, we've just kind of been playing too loose with this for the last decade. We need to remove some of the special programs we created. We need to go back to a black and white jumbo, non-jumbo arena. Um, you would see housing stop moving and advancing um, in that higher and mid to higher level of housing, because what we've done is made it easy for those people to buy and refinance their homes. They already have great credit. They already have good jobs and good income. We've just continued for a decade to make it easier and easier for them to acquire more. And if
Hmm.
we could take that and reverse that, I think that would stop this escalation. It definitely would impede it and slow it down for sure.
Yeah, that's, that old saying, the rich get richer. Um, if, if we were to take a position that just had policy around lending, is that what you're saying? Policy around the lending
Mm-hmm.
that makes it more of an even playing field?
Yeah, it,
Um,
it it would. I mean, so I haven't done mine just yet this year. They finally made it formal and announced what the new conforming loan limit is going to be for the nation. So this is nationally. This is not just for the state of California. The new national um conforming loan limit is $806,000. That sounds ludicrous.
really high, right?
Yeah, I can understand. So we had created after the crash and around 2014, I actually should do the history on it and find out. We created a new sector of financing that had never been available before. It was called, and we've called it high balance. And what high balance has done is it's allowed people who should be jumbo loans an opportunity to still purchase property or finance property more at a conforming loan with a small little bump of pricing, but they get all of the same underwriting guidelines and all of the perks and all the pricing with a small little bump of a hit for pricing for being a high balance. And so that's kind of how we've been running for about 8 years now. We've been running with this high balance. And last year, they had moved conforming loan limit up quite a bit to where we didn't really need this high balance very often. And this year, no one's talking about high balance. Like no one's really made any big announcements like it's gone away or it's not going to be here. Um, but no one's talking about how we need it, like how that's a sector on all of our rate sheets, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that they are going to try to get rid of it, like this whole high balance kind of nichey thing that we created to ease people from having to be in jumbo loan situations. Um, but if we could go back to the old black and white, which is everything over the conforming loan limit is a jumbo and everything under the conforming loan limit is a conforming loan, I think things would even out a bit because you would, if you wanted to be in that upper echelon, you got to save more because it's a higher risk for the lenders. The lenders require more down payment for those larger properties, etc. And so I think we'd see things kind of slow down. And if things slow down, then you build up inventory. And if you build up
Hmm.
inventory, you build up different price brackets in that inventory. That's what helps first-time home buyers is having those price brackets so that people can afford to go buy a home that might need some maintenance or whatever, but they can get to it, doesn't need it right now. And then the houses that do need it right now, the lenders protect those buyers, and the lenders, as they protect those buyers when they're coming to buy, will make sure that anything that's really detrimental to owning a home or the value of owning that home gets fixed prior to closing escrow. So I'm welcome this kind of the slow that we've had, the inventory that's building, the reality check that sellers are getting. I mean, what they got during what sellers got during the pandemic, that was just it was
Insane.
just kind of crazy what we did, and we should have never did it. I was looking at the I keep a chart for the conforming loan limit scale that goes up every year. I keep it right here next to my desk on a bulletin board. I just pulled it off. And in 2019, from 18 to 19, we moved from 453 to 484. Not huge, about $31,000 in the adjustment. But then we go into the pandemic in 2020 and we move almost another 30,000. We go to 510 and 514 would have been 30 grand. But then in the middle of the pandemic from 20 to 21, we go from 510 to 548. So we make up for that little 4 grand we didn't increase the year before and go another 4 grand and we actually increased by $34,000. But if that wasn't the kicker, this ought to blow your mind. In 2021, as we're still in the pandemic, we're kind of coming out. Um, we moved from 2021 2022. Now, mind you, they make these adjustments at the end of a calendar year. So at the end of 2021, while we're still in a pandemic, they decide that we're going to move. Now, remember what was going on with home values, right? They were
Oh
shooting through
yeah.
the roof because there was very limited um, inventory because a ton of people didn't want strangers coming through their house because of the pandemic. And then number two, a bunch of corporations said, don't come to the office anymore. You can work from home. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can work from home, you can go buy a house anywhere you want as long as you show
Right.
up for your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So money started moving from communities left and right because, and across all the way across the nation, because people were like, oh, I can go live in Nashville. I can go live here. I can go live at a way lower cost of living and still keep my job from California and other places. So at the end of 2021, $30,000 bumps wasn't enough. We want to go and we want to adjust it from $548,250 to $647,200. That's $100,000 jump,
Yeah.
just shy by a couple $100. That was crazy. And we still keep adjusting in 40 and $30,000 increments even since then.
Mm.
That was adjusted in an inflated market that should have never been adjusted, that we should have never did any of that. And we've not made any adjustments otherwise. When you look back to what happened during the crash of 2008, we had maxed out at a loan limit at $417,000 in 2006. And when I say that, values were rising, 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 rising. 2005, we were only at 359,000, but they make this huge jump from 2005 to 2006. And the jump is over $50,000. We go from 2005, 359,650 to $417,000 in that 1 year, 2005 to 2006. And 2006 is the year things level off. 2007, we have subprime starting to implode on itself during the summer. And then 2008, the whole world gets hit with what's
Yep.
going on. But we left it at 417 in 2006 when the market started leveling off. We never changed it. And we were at 417 all the way through the crash and all the way for almost a decade. We moved it to 417 in 2006 and we left it for 10 full years. And in 2016, at the end of that year, going into 2017, we made a modest jump of $7,000 from 2016 to 2017, $424,100. So you can see how we used to keep housing affordable, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the history prior to the 2005 move, you'll see that the jumps in the um, conforming loan limit were very minimal. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 8,000, stuff like that. Not 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, $100,000. We didn't
Right.
make jumps like that.
Mm.
So you look at this and you go, okay, well, how does this happen? And that's what no one has ever brought out since this started changing like this. No one's talking about it. And the first president who got drunk off of housing was actually um, Clinton. Then the one who jumped on board with the banks and had a bunch of bank money get filtered into his campaign was Obama. And I don't care like who you voted for or whatever, like, I voted for some of these presidents and stuff. So the reality is it's just a matter of how that big fish plays in that pond with the banks and the policies that go into place. And so when you look at this, it's interesting to see like, are we ready for another bubble to burst? And I look at all this inflated value that the government had, because when the government to get out of the crash, the government came in and conserved FHA, which is now called FHFA. Um, and so they conserve them, they conserve Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So because they conserve them, the government's actually in charge of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're the overseer. So they're setting these policies where these policies used to be independent,
Mm.
but they're not. They're not now. So I look at this and I go, okay, well, the government's been the one who's at steering the wheel. Where are we headed? And honestly, I could see us having, I don't think it'll be anywhere near what we had before because we don't have all of the toxic loan programs and the prepayment penalties and the short-term adjustables. Don't get me wrong, short-term adjustables are back and they've been back for 3 years now.
Mm.
Um, but with that being, and they're being used right now, like I'm competing against them with other lenders, and I'm telling people I wouldn't take it if I was you. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I said all through summer '04, all of '05, and most of '06, and all of '07. I said I wouldn't take it if I was you, and I lost a lot of clients because I said I wouldn't take it. And you know what they lost?
Their house.
Houses.
Yep.
And I didn't cause it. So I felt fine that I didn't cause any of that.
Yeah.
I lost friends over it because they
Yeah.
wouldn't listen when I told them that's not a good, it's gonna blow up in your face. You're
Mm.
not gonna have equity to get back out of that when you need to get out of it. We're headed there. We have that being pushed in the market right now. I literally had one of my ex-employees call me or text me yesterday and start asking me what their friend should do about an adjustable rate versus a buy down. And I said, I'd take the buy down if someone's offering it. They can't afford to do it themselves. That's why they don't offer buy downs to the borrower. The seller has to pay the buy down. So I take the buy down because it's a fixed rate. You take the
Mm-hmm.
arm and it's adjustable and it could be adjusting as quick as 6 months down the road or a year. What happens
Right.
if,
Depending on what it's tied to, right?
yeah, and what happens if value, I just told you right here in the suburban area, we're losing value, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if that continues? What happens if that trend continues? Then you don't have equity to even refinance when you need to because you don't have the same equity position as when you took out the last loan. That's nothing different than what exactly happened when the crash happened in 2008.
That's right. Yep. And people were applying for new loans on other properties and then defaulting on their other loan.
This could be awesome for public service workers, for state workers. This could be great because they all got priced out during COVID and their jobs were not allowing them to go buy a house
To
in a
go
more
corporate.
affordable area, right?
Yeah.
So they
Mm-hmm.
all got completely priced out and have not been able to recover. And so if we have a crash or we have a bubble that gets bursted and all of a sudden values start dropping, which they are already especially in California,
Mm-hmm.
in all of the rural areas, because of our fire zones, right? And
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
fire insurance is so expensive. And that started coming out 2 years ago, but no one really, because we were still in that pandemic, everybody could afford to buy the houses. The people that were buying the houses could afford the fire insurance. Well, they're
Sure.
singing a whole nother tune now
Mm-hmm.
because they can't believe they're paying five, six, seven, $8,000 annually for homeowners insurance. And now they're like, we want to go. We've sold 3 houses where people only lived there for a year. They only
Oh,
lived there
because
for
of
a
this.
year because that insurance came back up for renewal, and they were like, we have to commute back now to our old jobs.
Yeah, they got
That
to go
plus
back
the
to the
cost of this
office.
insurance, it really doesn't make sense to live here anymore.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, it might be fun to do, to take just what you said, and we have this recorded, and bring out an article around what makes affordable housing affordable, right? Versus just saying what's affordable housing. It's a big topic right now.
Right.
And if we were to be able to debunk it a little bit by saying, well, what makes affordable housing affordable? And just pull on some of these levers that you've just, eloquently walked through. Um, I think that would be a compelling, uh, press release or uh, definitely, a little higher level press release where article could be picked up because it's not just localized. It's an example, but it's able to the media is able to say, hey, this is newsworthy in a sense.
Right, right. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where we're at by spring, summer this year. We had a horrible summer last year, probably the worst summer that I've seen since probably 2015.
Mm,
Actually 14. 15 was better than last year. And that's crazy because even though we had a pandemic, my personal business, and I was going through a lot of personal turmoil with other extended family health issues, and then I had a heart attack, and but I celebrated 19, 20, and 21 consecutively. All three of those were the best years of my career.
wow.
19 was the first, 20 beat that one, and 21 beat that one. I knew 22 wasn't going to. I could feel it. I
Mm,
already knew right within the first quarter. I said, this is not going to, we're not even going to, we're going to be at about maybe 2/3 of what we did in 2021. And I was right. I was really, we were almost dead on. And it wasn't just me, it was myself and my other originator at the time.
hmm
And then uh, I looked out and thought, 23 looks very dismal. I don't know what's going to happen. And um, it was just kind of, it was okay. It wasn't awesome. It didn't suck. It wasn't as good as 22. And then I looked out at 24 and said, this is going to be a horrible year. Save everything we make because we're going to need it for 24. And
mm.
I was 100% right. So
Isn't that
I've seen
amazing?
the cycles. I call
Yeah.
24 2026 or 2006.
Mm.
That right now that I said I thought that 24 could be 2006. It's the year where things level off and begin to start moving down. So the question will be, is 2025 going to be 2007, where we start seeing programs removed, investors pulling out of the secondary market, second mortgages all of a sudden not being so popular because they're popular like crazy right now.
The
And
second mortgage?
oh yeah, every bank that does mortgages for first mortgages now has second mortgages.
Mm.
Like been there, done that. We've done this before. We have been in these markets before. Everybody has 100% down payment program. So seen that. That started back in like 2000, and then we
Yeah.
rolled it 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, and nobody was using 100% financing in 2005. Well, very few, but because very few people could afford not putting some money down to afford the monthly payment because values
Yeah.
were rising so quickly.
Hmm.
And then 2006 is when we capped and values had to start cutting back. So, and they're detecting a lot of fraud again as well.
Well, there's a surprise.
Yep. So fraud for income fraud,
Yeah.
and then fraud for values again. Even though we supposedly, we have different mechanisms in place that we never had before the last crash, using appraisal management companies where we don't directly have a relationship with the appraisers anymore. So
Mm.
interesting, but yeah, there's, fraud popping up left and right now, and it's been there since COVID actually, and it's still been on the rise. So foreclosures are on the rise, fraud is on the rise. This just seems very much like what we saw back in 2005, 6, 7, but precursor to the crash.
When you think of cycles, I mean, this is at 20 years now. If cycles, generally we have inflation cycles about every 10 years. How does this fit in with the real estate inflation and deflation kind of cycles? Is it 20 years on an
It,
average
it- you know,
historically?
it's funny that they like to say historically, right? But we can't, when you look at it and you uncover just the last 100 years, right? When did homeownership actually become something obtainable for everyone or for the majority, right?
Yeah, probably not till the 50s, right? 50s, 60s.
even then, was it for most, right? Because communities of color weren't getting easy home ownership at that time. They couldn't even
That's
go into a
true.
bank.
No, that's true.
We still didn't have equal credit opportunity laws and stuff like that, equal housing
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. We didn't have that yet. Those
Right.
come in the 60s, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not until like the 70s and 80s that we actually start to get that. And then when you look at how those people were working hard to get those houses, um, my grandfather was didn't even have a high school education, but he was able to own a home by being a self-employed person. When
Mm.
you look back and go through the 50s and the 60s, right? Now I'm Hispanic, but when I say my grandfather, I mean my grandfather on my mom's side, and she's white. Okay. So he could get that and he could pay a house off in like 7 years. Okay. We don't, even you and I don't know that. We've never seen that an opportunity to own a home and pay it off in 10 years. No. And the reason
No.
why is because in the 70s, the 30-year mortgage became the new package.
Mm.
Why? Because it was good for the banks, right?
And more
So then
affordable.
by
Mm-hmm.
the time we go 10 years forward into the 80s, the new thing was the savings and loans, right? And so they're doing a
Oh
ton
yeah.
of adjustables, but there's a savings and loan scandal that happens in the 80s, and we have
Mm-hmm.
massive inflation in the 80s, right?
I remember, yeah.
And I'm a child of that, but I don't know it economically, right? But my parents do. They
Mm-hmm.
tell me about, oh yeah, it was nothing. Rates were 13, 16, 17% for houses.
Yep. I can remember my parents talking about a 12%
Yeah,
loan being a good deal.
yep, yep. And so it won't be until the 90s when I'm going through high school and learning about economics where you're actually somewhat paying attention. And then I go to college in the 90s and start hearing about economics and I'm taking accounting classes and you keep hearing your professors talk about inflation. It's still not, I'm not a homeowner, so I really don't get it, right?
Yeah.
Other than I remember when, by then, by the time I'm in high school and college, I remember that a dollar used to buy me like at least 4 or 5 things at the candy store, you're right? Like at the 7-Eleven or whatever when I was
Mm-hmm.
little. It doesn't anymore. It barely buys me a tank of gas. Like 1 gallon of gas is over $1 at that point. So
Mm.
I'm understanding inflation at the time, but I'm not in my career, so I don't understand housing inflation. But it's really quick in 96 I graduate with an AA in business because I decided I hated accounting and changed my what had been my major since high school was accounting. And I decided I would go get business. So I go into this into lending and I don't realize at the time in 96 I get my first job. I don't realize I'm coming in on top of massive inflation. So I'm
Oh yeah.
offering rates anywhere from like a low rate at that time was like 8.25, 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
That's a low rate at that time. So, and we were doing a ton of adjustables. There were a lot of companies out there getting in trouble for the adjustables that they were doing. And the savings and loan scam had already happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, to make the loans more profitable, they started packaging them up and doing what's called an MBS or mortgage-backed security. And that is today's mortgage lending world still.
Mm.
But they used those from the 90s into all the way up to the crash, and that was the whole issue which caused the crash was they were basically hedging on these mortgage-backed securities, betting on the market, right?
Yep.
And so they were making them riskier and riskier and riskier and riskier. And so at this point, that's what we're still doing. We're still doing these mortgage-backed securities, and they're still hedging on the market and what's going to happen. So we haven't changed that policy, and that policy is all banked on basically the 30-year mortgage, right? So why would it be unforeseeable that we don't have another crash? We're still doing the exact same thing we did before. The only thing different is we removed a lot of the time bombs that were prepayment penalties and things like that. But we're still praying, I'm not, but the market and the industry, the banks are still providing products that prey on the consumer's desire to own a home so badly that they'll take the risk of a riskier loan like a short-term fixed rate that will eventually become an adjustable rate. It'll either become an adjustable 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can probably get on board with someone taking like the 7 year. I might even be able, depending on their background and their means, like how long they've been in their job, that sort of stuff. Are both people in the family employed? What is their debt to income ratio? Maybe a 5 year adjustable. The problem is people aren't taking those things into consideration, and they're just doing exactly what we did before, which is what's the most affordable payment I can get, and what program does it come on? Oh, okay, you have a 3 year fixed rate that I can have right now. You have a 1 year fixed rate with a maybe a 2 year buy down sitting on it. So, okay, that you're going to buy my rate down for the next 2 years, but then after those 24 months, it's going to be adjusting on me on a regular basis after that. Ooh, well, I hope rates go down. Yeah. So did everybody else prior to the crash. You cannot go into homeownership with hope being your long-term plan.
Yeah.
We learned that and we're doing it again.
Oh man. Wow. That's incredible
So
perception.
it's scary. And
Mhm.
I'm really learning how much of it's out there. Um, because people that are moving a lot of volume or closing a lot of deals, they're using these adjustable loans.
Mm.
And I'm like, you're banking on the market improving for them. And investors right now, like if I kind of opened you guys up to um, some different data resources this week,
Yeah.
and there's one more I'll give you. I just didn't want to inundate you, but it's that time of the month where they start posting the data from what they collected from last month or the last 2 or 3 months or 90 days or whatever. So it's all popping up right now. So I'll share one more with you guys that like I'm able to go and grab from my association with the California Association of Realtors. But um, every everybody who has a big name um, attached to their corporation and is dealing with real estate or real estate data, they are all anticipating growth. And I'm like, really, because if you look at all the data that's actually physically factual, you'll see that the market has already begun trending backwards. Things are
Mm.
leveling off. Yes, I will give it to you that if the home is a turnkey property, fully upgraded and updated, and sitting in a premier location community, yes, you are going to get a pretty decent penny for it. But if that were to hold true on everything in turnkey inventory, then why are builders sitting on inventory right now? And
Right.
builders are sitting on inventory across the nation right now.
Mm.
If they if they were like, "Oh my gosh, permits for new development is just skyrocketing." Now you got to be worried because that signals inflation, right? That
Mm-hmm.
signals we can't build them fast enough for the demand that's there right now. We don't have that. That changed last winter, and we saw it because the only reason why builders have any like demand at all is because they're not building houses like crazy everywhere. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some states that are building like crazy, but they're getting the transplants from the higher
Mm-hmm.
price states and stuff that are coming over and filtering in. That's nothing new. We've seen that before. We saw that happen before the crash. We saw 2005 mass exodus from California, leaving and going to Arizona, Idaho,
Yeah.
Nevada, Colorado was huge. Um, So Texas was huge. So it's interesting. We'll see. The pandemic created that already, the mass exodus. Now let's see what happens. You can see the same, it's the same cycle. The
Yeah.
question is, do we have enough one restraint, which I don't think we do. It's America. We're
It's not
capitalists.
human nature.
We're greedy as all greed can be. So I don't, but the question is, did we build in enough safeguards in the new lending era that we're in now post the last crash? Did we build in
Hmm.
enough safeguards? I'm not sure that we did, because if we did, we wouldn't see the rise of defaults that we're seeing right now, foreclosures, and we wouldn't
Hmm.
see the rise of fraud that we're seeing right now.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
that's an
really
interesting
am, when
metric.
people are asking me, well, what do you think? I said, I think that a bubble is going, some sort of, like, we're going to see a dip, and I think we'll begin to feel it in 25, but we're really going to feel it in 26 unless something comes really genuinely awesome and unique from the new president that's coming into office. If they, unfortunately, they showed us what they could do in their last 4 years, and I'm not sure that they got the right people. We have yet to see the right people since the crash create something that's healthy and sustainable.
Yeah.
I think this is going to crash mainly because of all the inflated value that we've done with the conforming loan limit.
Hmm.
Um,
Very
we're
interesting.
watching job layoffs almost in every sector at this point. Now, if we start seeing major layoff in tech, mark my words right now, boom, there's your recession.
Sure. Well, especially out here where there's tech-driven house buying.
Yep.
And we
Well,
saw a lot
and
of layoffs in tech last year.
last last 2 years we
Yeah.
have, and now it's still happening. So the question will be, will there be, and especially the more AI that comes in, and the more um kind of mm, what do you call it? Like when people's roles get pushed together. So I handle this right now, but now I'm going to handle this person's job over here too, and they're going to
Yeah.
minimize, and I'm going to take on more of responsibility. So if that continues to be the way that they do things in the tech world, you're going to see more and more people losing their jobs.
Yeah. That consolidation is bound to happen. We were just on with an AI creator this afternoon earlier, uh, just a couple hours before our meeting here. And he was talking about the Industrial Revolution. And, he said uh, the biggest comparison to AI evolution to tech is when the calculator came out,
Mm,
because the calculator allowed us to handle larger arithmetic than was humanly possible in a short and easy period of time. Right. So as soon as we were able to write programs to calculate numbers, that's what led to the whole, supercomputer and all of that stuff that's now processing tons and tons of data in record amount of time. And that's what AI is doing.
mm,
If you can write a book in 30 minutes instead of 3 years,
yeah.
right? So it's just that whole speed of performing a task that now where they're now talking about AI agents where they're doing workflows. You generate an image, it goes to so and so, they generate content, goes to so and so, they put it into a book format or whatever it is.
Mm,
And AI agents are now they're in the process of developing agents that actually move the work through multitasks. So yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to be interesting.
Yes, I think for, even though we've had this recent change with realtors and their commissions, etc., I think the number one thing that keeps that industry somewhat safe for a while longer is the massive risk that's involved, right? For your first time home buyer, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then let's go to the other spectrum, right? Your first time home buyer is usually someone who's young, but let's go to the other end of the spectrum, which is someone who's older and downsizing, and this is going to be their last home, right? So they absolutely typically are on some sort of fixed income. It's going to be their last situation. Whatever they don't use on a house is going to go probably into like an annuity or whatever and be part of their income. They can't risk anything either.
Right.
And they definitely want their hand held. So
Hmm.
those two elements are not your elements that are going to drive the point click and I want it. Although, the younger the buyer, um, the more comfortable they are with a point click um process, right? Oh, I see that house, it looks great, I want to buy it. Well, that's fine. A lot of people have done that, but so far we haven't seen anybody give like a 10-day or 30-day money back guarantee after you point click and buy.
Right.
Right now you're stuck in it and there's real money that's involved after that.
Hmm.
And your first time
Yeah.
home buyers don't have that kind of real money to just flush away. Oh, well, I didn't like this one, I want to change, right? But we
Mm.
did we did have that. We
Mm.
had that from 2003 to 2007. Oh, I don't like this. I want to go to the new neighborhood that has newer houses. Values are my value has increased. I have so much equity. I can go ahead and just sell this one and go buy another one. I'm going to go buy another one and I'm just going to walk away from this one.
Hmm.
And so we haven't, we created a lot of things within the industry to prevent that walk away. And they brought them back during COVID, and they really haven't removed them. They're still there. They want, if you're going to go buy another property, they want to see about 20 to 25% equity in your house that you currently own right now if you're not going to sell it.
Uh,
Or you're going to have to go on to some other weird program that's not a conforming loan limit, meaning you're not going to get the best rate for the next house you decide to buy.
mm-hmm.
So we'll again we'll see how this plays out. I do have hope that the new president has some people and some plans for housing, for lending, but I would say this, if we see at the end of this year another increase of 30 plus $1,000 to the farming loan limit, get ready for a burst
Mm.
because the bubble's gonna burst.
Interesting. We actually had one of our earlier clients, Ada will remember the Urban Group, where he did a whole series seminar on the real estate bubble. Are we in a bubble?
Who did
And he
that?
was,
Who did the
uh,
series?
yeah, Avi Urban, the Urban Group down in Silicon Valley in San Jose area. He's
Oh,
based in
okay.
Sunnyvale. And so basically his entire book of business is Silicon Valley buyers, right?
Oh, okay.
And so he did this 4 hour seminar on the real estate bubble, the history behind it and everything. And so his whole series was about, are we in a real estate bubble? Is the bubble going to burst, or, what's going to happen? So it was a interesting historical walkthrough of the market, the interest rates, affordability index, how that relates to the market in Silicon Valley, incomes, affordability index, how those all kind of work together to predict, kind of where the market's trending.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what you're saying isn't wasted on me. I really am clicking in, just from overall education and in working with clients in this industry for so many years to hear all of this and to say, okay, well, maybe there's something more that we need to tell the public.
I'm all for it. You know, I don't mean to get on a soapbox, but um I just find it very weird that our industry, my industry, has yet to address. I have not seen one paper, one article, one video at all on the, hey, is anybody else watching how much we've raised the conforming loan limit over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about that.
It blows me away. And just the history of it, right? If you look at
Mm-hmm.
the history of it prior to, like if you go back to when we started tracking a conforming loan limit, we never got drunk on it before. We
Mm-hmm.
just didn't. Um, there were some fairly decent moves in the 2000 to 2005, but they weren't significant. They weren't 20 and 30 and $40,000 jumps. And then we you know definitely have to heal from all the bruises and beat up that we took it with the crash. But you know the market started to kind of rebound around 2000, like 13, and then 14 was a solid year, and then 15 was better, and then 16 was even better. And you know it took 3 years of consistent improvement before they moved that again, because we didn't move it. They didn't move it until we moved into 2017. So they
Mm-hmm.
waited for three really fairly improved years, one on top of the next on top of the next, and then they finally moved it. And you know when they moved it, they only moved it 7 grand.
Yeah.
I look at this as a travesty to the generations that are coming behind us. Uh, we have never seen so much inflation in such a short amount of time when it comes to housing. And that's not fair. That's not fair to the younger people at all.
Well, that's got to speak to affordability too, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me,
Because
it's
incomes aren't keeping up with it.
no, and it's everything they miss out on, though. That's what frustrates me. That's what allows me to, want to talk about it is that housing security is everything for a family, especially if they've
Mm.
never grown up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so to deny that opportunity or to really put constraints on it and limit it, that that's just sad.
It's and you speak about both ends of the spectrum, the younger and the older, and of course the older's it's, when it's all of a sudden getting real, you know. You come into the end of your income growth, you're coming into fixed income periods. Is your housing secure?
Yeah, you're back to the only option now is basically stay in. Hopefully you've paid your mortgage down and you owe hardly anything on it and you can just stay there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's not really what elderly people need. They actually need like a simpler living style. So they need to be able to sell that home and maybe move into like a condo, a townhome, something like that, that they don't have to keep up the outside of the home because they don't have the ability to do that anymore. And they're on fixed income, so they can't really pay someone to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's all about the money. We have definitely proved that in this nation, and we're not about our people at all. And that's just it's incredible. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can see all the homeless around your area, and
Oh
anytime
yeah.
you move into or drive into an urban area, it's everywhere. It's massive. Most I've ever seen.
Well, and my wife works as a social worker in San Francisco City. And she goes, you're just stepping over people now.
Yeah.
There's so much homeless. A lot of it has to do with, they've turned to fentanyl and a lot of drug use, and it's just gotten really, really invasive.
Yeah, we're saying this like this is a new thing to us, but um, one of our members on the call right here is from Sao Paulo, so she sees the worst of the worst. We don't even know what
Yeah.
poverty is compared to what she sees. So
Yeah.
yeah, our homelessness is nothing compared to what her homelessness is that she sees.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something.
But it is a mind blower for me. It's a mind blower that we have an industry that if we could just stop being greedy and getting drunk on profit, we could turn this around. We could absolutely make housing affordable. We could give opportunity. We have the ability, we have the technology, we have the knowledge and know-how. Why can't we do it? Not only that,
Yeah.
but why do we gotta keep getting drunk on the 30-year mortgage product?
Hmm.
Why not move people back to having something that's more achievable, like a 15 or a 20-year mortgage? Make that the standard.
Yeah. A lot would have to change, right, in order
Yeah,
for
you'd
that to
need
happen.
you'd need lower home values.
Hmm. Yeah. And then you've got the whole competition thing, right? So it's tough. It was kind of like during the pandemic, walking in to an open house and people bidding things up and, talking about their background and, you know, it was just like a cocktail party. It wasn't, wasn't,
Yep.
you know, it's crazy. Well, you've given us a lot to chew on. I appreciate that. And it really goes to our conversations around content in this last week or two. And thank you for providing those resources. And I wanted to have Vanessa and Tammy here. Tammy just had to pop off. She's got a class, but having them here who's helping with conveying these messages and your content, I wanted them to be able to hear it directly from you and hear your passion behind it. So thank you for taking the time, to go through it in detail.
Yeah, sorry, Vanessa. I see that you're there. I have my daughter's graduation at the end of this week, and we have family coming in the middle of the week. And so I was like, I'm not turning my video on today, because I'm not dressed for it. Like I'm in clothes to go work in my yard, not to work on marketing. So anyway, I'll make sure that next time you can put a face to a voice and be ready. Um, but thank you, all of you, the whole team, everybody. I was just telling my wife, like, I'm just, I'm, I have, I'll be honest with you, Joel, I haven't been excited about lending since 2007.
Mm,
So, because after the crash, which 2007 was a hard year, was me telling a lot of people, I wouldn't do it if I was you.
yeah.
Don't do it. Don't take that loan. And that led into 2008 where people were calling like, hey, can you help me refi? And it was like, nope, nope, nope. Can you help me sell my house? Nope, nope, no, I
Mm,
can't. Can you help me save from going into foreclosure? Nope, can't help you. We don't have programs for that anymore. Um, and even though I really enjoy working with first-time home buyers, um, and had reopened an office in 16, and started employing a team again in 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. Because of the pandemic, it really took a lot out of me because I love working with first-time home buyers, right?
mm,
And so I couldn't work with them because most of the people that were coming and buying houses were not from this area. So the majority of people I had been starting to work with in 18 and 19, and we were looking to help buy homes, were all of a sudden priced out of the market.
yeah.
And then when rates started to go up, they were really priced out of the market.
Hmm.
So it took a lot of that steam that I had, that I was building up and kind of re-synergizing, the team effort again of having an office. It took it right out. And
Mm,
again, like economically, financially, I was fine. Like I incredible years, 19, 20, and 21.
hmm.
But it's not fun. It's not joy. And I miss that. I miss working and educating and empowering the next generation of buyers, right? Um,
Hmm.
and that was gone. Now it was more or less you had people with a lot of money like expecting you to just jump. And I'm like, it's a pandemic. How do you jump in a pandemic? We have a lot of new rules, regulations that we have to abide by. We have to abide by them. We can't change those. And so it was just, even though we would have some clients here and there, a lot of them had really high expectations. And, we did what we could to meet them, and we obviously did fairly well, but
Hmm.
it just was a different level. And now I think we have that ability to go back and work with those people who've been priced out of the market for the last 3, 4 years since the pandemic and get them into homes, because they're not going to lose their job. They work for the state, they work for public service, they work for education. They're not losing their jobs. So
Yeah.
they're all going to have their income still coming in while other people start losing income.
Yeah.
So I do like your idea about at least getting the message out there about affordable housing, etc.
Good. Sounds great.
Let me know what else you guys need. I'll send you the other item, which is I can't even think of it. Anyway, it'll be California Association of Realtors who will be putting it out.
Hmm.
But I flagged it so I could give it to you after this.
Nice. Sounds great.
And
All right.
then
We'll look forward to it. We'll
let
catch
me
up.
know. I don't know if you guys will need passwords for that, because it just says like type in the zip code and it'll change the data for the zip code. So if you need passwords, just let me know.
Oh, okay. Will do.
Anything else you need?
That's it. I appreciate it, Jose.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Hang on. Stop recording.